Okay, so welcome to this class where we'll continue discussing our introductory physiology or biology in short. So today we're going to continue with this second topic. We are done with the introductory part and we're now moving to the second topic that we call homeostasis. So this is not the first time hearing this word. We've been mentioning this word since high school. Some of us since even primary school. If you went to a private school, I'm sure you already know what homeostasis is all about. And I expect everyone at least to have an idea by today on what homeostasis is actually all about. So we're going to look at this topic, a very interesting one, and also very important to the well-being of each and every organism or living organism. And without wasting much time, let's actually get into this. So, what do we actually think homeostasis is? So, if we look at the human body, at some point in first semester, or we discussed about enzyme catalyzed reactions. And in short, I can just talk about the internal environment of the human body or of an organism. Because physiology is going to focus on the study of biological functions in the body by examining mostly how they work from the cellular level to uh, the point where we look at the organism as a whole, how the whole organism is actually going to function. So that's actually considered as a physiology. So it is going to help us in explaining the specific characteristics and mechanisms that are going to make the body a living thing. So we're talking about the internal environment. And this internal environment actually has to be kept under certain characteristics or under certain conditions in order for an or for the or in order for the survival of an organism. And in order for that to happen, or for that constant environment to be maintained, we need processes or a process that we call homeostasis. So in definition, we can just define homeostasis as the body's process of maintaining its internal environment within an acceptable range. So the internal environment, it's not a strict point that we expect all the physiological conditions in the human body to be on a specific point or at a specific figure. It's actually a range. It's a dynamic equilibrium and not a static state I've mentioned here. And this is achieved through continuous and active adjustments. So we have acceptable ranges. For example, if we talk about temperature, the human temperature, we know to say the body temperature has to be maintained at a certain figure, at a certain number, but that certain number is not an exact number. For example, the way we used to answer at primary level of our education to say the the desirable human body temperature is exactly 37 degrees Celsius. That is not actually the case here. We understand to say we have a range from 36 degrees Celsius to at least 38 degrees Celsius. That's an acceptable range that we expect our body temperature to be at. And when it is in that range, we expect the physiological systems in the body to be actually working at their optimum. So it's the ranges and not just um, a static state. So we're defining homeostasis as the body's continuous and active process of maintaining its internal environment within a remarkably narrow and acceptable range despite constant external fluctuations. Okay, so that is homeostasis and uh, how it is helping the human body to maintain a precisely narrow acceptable range of physiologic conditions in the human body so that we have optimum activity for each and every activities of the cells. So this process is actually very crucial for survival because of its essentialness, very crucial for optimal cellular functions and also overall organism survival. Without this, biological systems would fail, leading to dysfunction and potentially death. So the major function of our homeostasis is that it is helping survival and the functionality of all cells to their optimum, such that if you have a fluctuation in a certain physiologic condition in the body, or in a certain physiologic parameter in the body, it is responsible for taking it back to its normal state or its normal range. Because if that is not corrected, if that particular fluctuation is not corrected, it will keep on fluctuating and it will be outside the acceptable range. And if that happens, the cellular activities are going to start failing. And if they continue failing, it can lead to death. As simple as that. A person dies because their blood sugar is very low. A person dies because their blood sugar is very high. It has even led to diabetes. A person dies because their body temperature is very low, or even when their body temperature is very high. So those are some of the causes of death if homeostasis is actually not kept. So that's a brief introduction to what this guy known as homeostasis actually talks about. It is talking about the maintenance of your internal environment. So what is this internal environment actually consisting of? We already discussed the internal environment when we are talking about topic one, and I'll just read through what I've written there to say cells constantly exchange nutrients and waste with their immediate surroundings. This surrounding fluid is the interstitial fluid. I mentioned the interstitial fluid in topic one, and I mentioned what it does and its responsibilities and its importance. So, how are the interstitial fluid is going to be bathing cells, maintaining the integrity of all the cells, thereby keeping their proper functionality. And the integrity of this interstitial fluid, the ISF, is going to be also maintained by what? By the blood plasma. It is going to be conditioned by the plasma, which is the fluid component of the blood. The integrity of the blood plasma, or the correct conditions of blood plasma, are also going to be maintained by various organ systems which interface with the external environment. And at the end of the day, we're going to notice that there is stability of the interstitial fluid. Of course, actually depending on the the plasma, which is playing a very crucial role and also highlighting why blood is or why the composition of plasma in blood is actually very, very, very important. So that's the internal environment. We can now talk about the components of our homeostatic mechanism. So in order for homeostasis to take place, there are some things that must exist in order for it to take place. And what are those things that need to be in existence in order for homeostasis to actually take place? The first one here is what I've mentioned as a variable. And a variable is the same physiologic conditions that we've talked about already in the introduction. So there will be a specific internal characteristic that is being monitored and controlled. That is what we're calling a variable, which is a physiologic state in the human body. For example, we have body temperature, we have blood glucose, we have things like blood volume, different examples. We can talk about pH of the cells. We can talk about uh, electrolyte concentration in the human body, different things. So those are the physiologic conditions, the physiologic parameters that are actually controlled and monitored by the body or by the body systems. Those are what we are calling variables. And in order for homeostasis to take place, we need that physiologic parameter. And the second one, we can call it a sensor or a receptor. Now, if you remember, in the previous topic, I had emphasized to you to say you need to go and look look up the body systems, because the last part of my notes were containing body systems and an overview of all the body systems. So if you indeed looked at those systems, or if you tried to look up those systems, you actually notice that they all play a crucial role in maintaining the integrity of an organism, maintaining the proper functionality of an organism. And one of the most important systems that we're going to talk about under homeostasis is what we call the nervous system and the endocrine system, because those play a direct role in coordinating, monitoring and coordinating and giving commands to all the other systems to maintain control of an acceptable internal environment. And when you look at the nervous system, one of the things it does is recept, sense the changes that are occurring in the environment of the organism, either the internal environment or the external environment. So one of the components of a homeostatic mechanism is this part of the nerve system, or the nervous system, that we call a receptor. So what is this receptor going to do? It is the one which will be detecting all the changes in the variable that we've talked about. And when it detects that fluctuation, or it detects the change in that variable, it is going to send the information to the control center, of which that control center is what we are calling the integrator, the control center. So when the receptor detects that information in the variable, um, from a particular parameter, it will be able to sense to say this one has fluctuated out of the acceptable range. It is going to send that information to the control center. And this control center is going to control that information to the set point. Now, what is this set point? The set point is just the acceptable range that we've been talking about, the ideal or the normal physiologic value or range the body strives to maintain. So we've talked about these before, or I'm from talking about this actually in the introduction. So that integrator now, it will get the information from the sensor, compare it to the acceptable ranges that it has, and if it sees that there is a fluctuation, what does it do? It determines the appropriate response, because this fluctuation is either it's going to be above the acceptable range or below the acceptable range. So the integrator is actually going to compare this to whatever set point it has in its system. Then from there, it is going to initiate a response. It is going to send a command, and that command is going to go to what we call an effector. The effector is the one that is going to receive a command from the integrator. Then this effector is going to initiate a mechanism that is going to produce a response to adjust that fluctuation and take it back to its original point. So those are the components of the homeostatic mechanism. Some theory will just mention for you three of them, of which mostly they'll mention the sensor, the integrator, and the effector. But there are these two, the variable and the set point itself, making them almost five. So if they ask you the three of them, you will be able to mention for them the sensor, the integrator, and also the effector. But if they ask you to mention all the five components of a homeostatic mechanism, you're actually going to mention those five guys, which are the variable itself, the receptor, the control center, the set point, and the organ, or the terminal organ, which is going to initiate, not initiating, or which is actually going to take the actual action in order for it to take back that fluctuating physiologic parameter to its acceptable or ideal range. Okay, so this is a diagram that is simplifying everything that I've talked about. We have the control center, or we have the receptor here, which is going to input information. and this one is going to be sent to the control center. The control center is going to compare that information to the set point or the acceptable range. Then it is going to do what? To send a command to the effector organ. And that effector organ is going to make sure that there is balance of that variable in homeostasis that we've already talked about. So the whole process is starting with an imbalance in the variable. Then that imbalance is going to be detected by the receptor. From there to the control center to the effector, and the effector is going to make sure the parameter is brought back to normal. There is a balance like that. Okay, so this is the same thing, looking at a homeostatic control loop. And what we expect when homeostasis is actually taking place. So when we talk about homeostasis taking place, there are some things that we expect from it. If your homeostasis is a success, what do you expect? You expect wellness. When there is wellness after a certain fluctuation in your physiological parameters or in your internal environment, you expect wellness, and this wellness is just going to indicate success, and therefore compensation by the homeostatic mechanism that was employed by the body to restore the balance in the internal environment. And if it fails, what happens if the fluctuation actually, or the physiologic parameter, is not brought back to normal? You're going to experience illness or disease. So if there is a fluctuation, the body temperature is very high or has gone above the acceptable range or has gone below an acceptable range, that's where you expect someone to be catching a cold, start shivering, you feel sick. Or if the temperature is very high, you also feel sick. And if those are not corrected, that internal environment is not brought back to balance, you're going to find that it starts affecting the functionality of the body system. It starts affecting the functionality of the body cells. And at the end of the day, some cells end up becoming inactive. They stop functioning because there is an imbalance in the internal environment. If not, they die. Because we know, if we look at the enzyme catalyzed reactions, the enzyme catalyzed reactions actually happen at a certain range of body temperatures, an optimum temperature. If the temperature overshoots outside the range, there's going to be destruction of that enzyme. There's going to be death of that enzyme. Or if the temperature goes down, what do we expect? We expect the enzyme to be deactivated, thereby shutting down some systems in the human body. And if those systems or the shutdown is persistent, they are not corrected, what do you expect? At the end of the day, we see an organism dying. It will succumb to that the dysfunction of the body cells. So death is going to occur in severe cases where homeostasis cannot be maintained. So these are the things that we expect from homeostasis. There's a disruption that, if that disruption has been dealt with, the condition has been brought back to normal, there'll be wellness. If it hasn't, there'll be illness or disease. If it's persistent, there's death that is going to occur. So those are the things that we're going to expect from a homeostatic response or a homeostatic mechanism. Very important. So I've talked about the two systems that are actually very or are in the poor position of the homeostatic responses. The ones that are able to detect, interpret, and initiate a command to all the other body systems are these two systems. They are the ones who are in the poor position of controlling homeostasis in the human body. So these are the nervous system itself and the endocrine system. So one of the similarities between these two systems is that they are both obviously involved in the maintenance of homeostasis, and they secrete chemicals in order for them to do that. To do that, if we talk about the endocrine system, it is going to be responsible for secretion of hormones, whilst the nervous system is going to be responsible for the secretion of neurotransmitters. Here, chemical messengers, hormones that are released from the endocrine system to command other body systems to initiate an effect that is going to bring back the internal environment back to an acceptable range. Whilst if it's the endocrine, the nervous system itself, it will be responsible for releasing of or transmission, production of neurotransmitters for nerves that are going to tell the system, the body that something is not okay. Then they'll interpret what is supposed to be done. Then they'll command the other body systems to take place. So I've put this diagram here to just compare and uh, distinguish the nervous system and the endocrine system. So both react to stimuli. Those are some of the similarities. Both help to maintain the homeostasis. Both systems are both systems of the body. Both are systems of the body that are responsible for sending messages. Some send chemical messages, while some send electrical messages. And then we have the hypothalamus, which is part of the organs of the endocrine system, which acts as a link between these two systems. Now, what are some of the differences? We're going to find that the nervous system is faster in response, which means it takes a short period of time in order for the nervous system to detect the change in the internal environment. So the nervous system, mostly even when you just hurt yourself, you break your skin or you pinch your skin, a neurotransmitter will be will be transmitted to the central nervous system, to the brain, to tell the body that, or to tell the brain that something is not right. And fast, a command, another electrical impulse will be transmitted to the effector organ to tell that part of the of the body that is being affected that there's something wrong there that is happening. So do something fast. And you're going to find that the reaction time is actually very slow as compared to the endocrine system. The reaction time is in the endocrine system is actually very, very slow because there is a hormone that is supposed to be secreted for that hormone to be able to reach the effector organ. So you're going to find that the reaction uh, time is actually um, very, very longer, or not very longer, but I can just say it's longer as compared to the nervous system. So the second one, the nervous system uses impulses to send messages, whilst this one uses hormones to send messages. The third one, organs. The organs that are involved in the nervous system are the brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves. Whilst here we have the glands as the ones that are um, making up the components of the nerve of the endocrine system. The fourth one, this one uses neurons, whilst this one uses hormones, and travels through the bloodstream. And this one contains two parts. We have what we call the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is composed of the 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 brain and the spinal cord, whilst the peripheral nervous system is actually composed of the peripheral nerves. Then when you come to the the endocrine system, it has hormones, and these are the different hormones or some of the examples of the hormones that you can talk about when it comes to the endocrine system. So those are the two systems that are actually actively involved in monitoring and initiating commands in or monitoring, uh, correcting, and sending commands to the other body systems to actually maintain homeostasis in the human body. Very important. So I've already talked about this. This is just another detailed vision of what I've already explained. And I have the endocrine system. I've even included a diagram which is showing some of the parts of the endocrine system, or the organs of the endocrine system, or the glands of the endocrine system. And those are some of the characteristics of the endocrine uh, system. Okay, so how do these systems now help to maintain homeostasis in the human body? It is through what we call the feedback mechanisms, or the feedback loops. So when I talk about a feedback loop, this is just referring to a response that a body or the body is going to produce after a certain change in the body, or a certain change in its internal environment has actually been detected. So these are the ones that govern homeostatic regulations by ensuring internal stability. Output of a system influences its own activity, allowing continuous adjustments. So these are the feedback mechanisms, these ones. So there are two types of these feedback loops. This one that I've indicated here is a general feedback loop where you have a sensor. The sensor is going to detect, a receptor which is also called the sensor anyway, is going to detect the stimulus change in the internal environment. And what is it going to do? It is going to send it to a control center. That control center is going to produce an effect to, or it is going to produce a command to the effector organ, and that parameter should be brought back to normal. So there are two feedback loops. There's what we call the negative feedback loop, and also the positive feedback loop. So this one that I've indicated here, the negative feedback loop, this is actually the main feedback loop, or the main feedback mechanism that the body uses in most of its homeostatic mechanism. It is the body's main regulatory mechanism for homeostasis. So what happens in a negative feedback loop? You're going to find that there is reversal. Stability is going to be achieved by a reversal of the deviation. So when there's a particular deviation or a change that has been detected, what's going to happen is that the corrective mechanism is going to be activated to return that condition to its normal range. It's going to reverse. If it was high, it is going to reduce it. If it was low, it is going to increase it. And that's the difference in the direction, the oppositeness in the direction between the change detected and the, the 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 correction initiated is what makes this feedback loop to be called a negative feedback loop. Is because there is reverse in direction. You are reversing the other direction. If initially it was low, you're going to increase it. If initially it was high, you're going to do what? You're going to reduce it. So a very important type of feedback loop in the body, and this one is actually the most common one, such that most body homeostatic mechanisms are actually going to employ this type of feedback loop. For example, if you look at thermoregulation, uh, blood volume regulation, blood sugar regulation, all those types of homeostatic regulations actually use the negative feedback loop. So it consists of these particular characteristics. There will be change detected, then corrective mechanism will be activated, and the purpose of that corrective mechanism will be to return the condition to its set point. And corrective mechanism is going to be switched off after that particular goal has been achieved, and the conditions in the body are going to return to the set point. If there's a change again, the loop will be there. The receptors will be able to detect the change, correct, condition returns, the loop shuts off because the condition is now back to normal, and that's maintaining homeostasis. So this is the most common one. In case you find such a question in your MCQs, that's actually the most common feedback loop that is employed by the majority of homeostatic mechanisms or the homeostatic loops in the body. The other one is what we call a positive feedback loop. So the opposite is the case here because a positive feedback loop is actually going to uh, increase a certain change in its same direction. So this one is going to intensify or amplify the original stimulus, driving the change in the same direction. So the negative feedback mechanism or the negative feedback loop was emphasizing on the reverse, or this one is going to amplify or increase the stimulus in its uh, same direction. So this one is very, very, very not common. Like if I can put it in that way, it's not very common. It's not a very common feedback loop or a most common feedback type of mechanism in the human body, and mostly it is going to be employed when a certain process must just be completed within a limited time frame. For example, this diagram that I've included here, which is a childbirth. Childbirth is actually expected to be completed within the shortest period of time. So we're going to employ a positive feedback mechanism in order for childbirth to take place and for the internal environment of the mother to actually come back to normal. And mostly it's just the stretching of the birth canal that needs to to be worked on by the positive feedback loop. When it starts stretching, the body is going to employ mechanisms that are going to stretch the birth canal even more, so that the mother is able to give child or to give birth properly, and the body goes back to normal. So this one is less common but essential for specific events that require rapid amplification, e.g., childbirth. And mostly you're going to find that these can actually be life threatening if they are not controlled. So there are a couple of positive feedback or a couple of homeostatic mechanisms that are going to employ the positive feedback mechanism or the positive feedback loop. I'm going to give you those examples, but what we must understand is that the positive feedback loop is actually scarce or it's rare. It's not very common as compared to the negative feedback loop. This one just needs to be employed when you need rapid action and you want that process to actually take place fast so that the body comes back to normal. And it is going to amplify, or I can use the word intensify, the original stimulus in that same direction. So those are the two loops, feedback loops that are employed uh, for homeostatic mechanisms to actually take place. So that is the the introduction to what homeostasis actually is, and these are some of the regulated physiological variables in the human body. We talked about water, salt, and electrolytes, it's oxygen and carbon dioxide, pH, blood volume, temperature, blood pressure, and blood glucose. So I've included the the ideal ranges of all these physiologic parameters, or the ideal ranges in which these physiologic parameters that I've mentioned here actually need to be kept for the normal or optimum functioning of the body systems or the body cells. If they go beyond this or they fluctuate outside this, then a homeostatic mechanism is actually going to be employed to bring back that particular uh, variable to its normal range. So these are the normal ranges that I've employed here. Blood pH, there's blood volume, 4 to 6 liters. Body temperature, 36.1 to 37.2 degrees Celsius, or that one in Fahrenheit. Blood pressure, the ideal one is 120 systolic and 80 millimeters of mercury diastolic to that one, or 120 over, not 2. This is systolic, this one is diastolic. So there's 120 over 80, 91 over 61. This is the normal range. If it goes above this, that is hypertension. If it goes beyond this, this is hypotension, and this needs to be corrected. And there's also regulation of blood glucose, very important. And these parameters actually should be kept in their ideal ranges for the proper functioning of the body cells. If it goes beyond this, there's going to be a dysfunction or a malfunction in some organs, some tissues, some cellular activities, hence leading to infection if not corrected, and if persistent, leading to death. Okay, so that's introduction to homeostasis. I wanted us to discuss up to blood sugar regulation, but we'll talk about this actually in our next meeting. So that means when we meet again or in our next class, we're going to talk about the regulation of these particular parameters or physiological variables that I've indicated here. The ones that I'm most going to concentrate on are blood volume, temperature, blood sugar, blood glucose, and also the positive feedback mechanisms that are actually employed during childbirth. Okay, so thank you for coming through to today's class, and that's all for today.